Today I'm going to make my key activity. I chose an apology, and I'm going to talk about life as a free choice in people that have any kind of mental disorder. So I'm going to start. At first, I think that as we don't decide the conditions in which we arrive to our own life, this being by any kind of physical or context situation, at least we should be able to decide when we want to continue within or when do we don't want to continue with it. I will also like to talk about what Aristotle said about this. He was against suicide, but I'm going to try to explain how I relate his theory with my point of view. He talked that for a human being being a substance, there were four elements. I'm going to talk about the third one or second one, which is efficiency. He talked that when this element wasn't present, the human being wasn't the human being, because for being, he needed to have these elements present. And if you have, I don't know, I'm going to give an example, borderline, and you feel like you can be day by day with yourself, like having stability every day is basically a fight, not only with you but also with your environment. Are you still efficient for yourself? Are you still efficient for the place that you live in? I think that, well, in this part is when enters the contradiction between at what point you continue being and at what point you are not. Of course that you can decide to give a different path to your own life, but I think that making this decision, it's a decision, it's not mandatory. And I chose this topic because I think that, well, I know really close cases that have a mental disorder. The most closest one, the most close is, or the closest one is my mother. She has borderline personality disorder, and since I was really young, since I was a child, I have seen how difficult it has been for her to develop relationships with others, to not having these arranques, this emotional instability where she feels bipolar, where she feels that sometimes she doesn't have the control of herself, and it's not only a fight for herself, it's also a fight for the way that she relates with other people. So I think that not in the specific case of my mom, because the grade that she has of this disorder, it's not as harm or it's not as developed as it is for other persons. However, I think that if you don't feel comfortable with your own life, with your own existence, and de por sí encontrarle un sentido a la vida es complicado, and you have this limitation that it's basically el pie que te impide avanzar, I don't think that it should be seen as wrong if you don't want to continue your own life, because, well, I think that dying with dignity is also deciding to not continue living. And, well, the philosophers that I'm going to also use for explaining my theory, or, well, not my theory but my statement, are two: Kant and Nietzsche. Nietzsche was very pessimist, I know, but he said that as life was meaningless and the only person which was in charge of giving a meaning to it was uno mismo, oneself, as you were the only charge of doing this task. He established that life was suffering and that the meaning of life was the one that you decided to give it to it. And, well, I basically think that if you don't find any kind of meaning and you don't want to continue within, even Nietzsche never talked about suicide directly. He talked about life being suffering. So if life is suffering, and more for a person who can't find sense in any type of path or in any kind of way, would that be seen as wrong? And, well, I chose two quotes. I'm going to talk about them in Spanish. Una era vivir con orgullo también es decidir cuándo morir con el mismo. And I think that this is completely true, because this is a really difficult decision. This is not something that you one day wake up and think like, oh, I want to commit this, or I don't want to continue living. I think that taking this decision is an accumulation of things, and if you don't feel capable to being mentally stable, which is your mind is the base of all the things in your life, and if you don't have that base and you don't want to continue with it and you feel trapped inside that suffering, as Nietzsche said, death could be the path for you, and I don't think that that is wrong. And well, by the other hand, there is Kant. I think that Kant would be against me because he was fully against the human being deciding to not continue with his own life, because he talked about how he was in debt with society and how important was that throughout morality we form our own ethics and we decide the way that we want to develop in the world that we live in. But I think that we are not in debt in any kind of way to the society. I think that we can make our aportaciones if we feel capable of doing it, if we have been in the conditions for doing it. But a person that has had it all throughout his own life has not the same responsibility, social responsibility, as a person that doesn't feel capable for continue doing it. So, well, I wanted to talk about this point, about how I don't think that there is a moral responsibility, or why this could be morally seen as wrong. And in conclusion, I think that the persons who have any kind, or well, the people that have any kind of mental disorder are should not be seen as wrong if they don't want to continue with their own life, because euthanasia and those methodics aren't available and aren't affordable for all. And at the end, life should be, in theory, when it's in terms of your own life and your own freedom, because well, your freedom ends when you put in risk the freedom of the others. But I think that if you're not putting in risk the freedom of other people, if you have really thought about this decision, if there are mental and physical limitations that don't let you continue with your life, not deciding to continue with him shouldn't be an obligation, should be a free choice election. Thank you.